As a premier community in Hampton Roads, James City County strives to maintain a high quality of life for all citizens through sound fiscal management and legislative actions. In an ongoing effort to increase transparency, your Board of Supervisors holds public meetings to garner citizen input before making important decisions. Here is tonight's meeting agenda. Stay tuned. The Board of Supervisors meeting will begin shortly.
Call to order this regular meeting of the James City Service Authority Board of Directors. Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Powell. How are you?
Good evening.
If you would please call the roll.
Ms. Adler.
Here.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Here.
Mr. McGlennon.
Here.
Mr. Hippel.
Here.
Ms. Larson.
Here. We have no presentations this evening. Do we have any public comment?
No, ma'am.
We do have a consent calendar. We have 1 minutes adoption, 2 contract award, sewer lift station, wet well cleaning, $75,513, and a resolution of appreciation for Danny Poe. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. And Mr. Powell, should we call the roll on this?
You don't need to on the consent
Okay.
calendar.
Well, I thought we'd do it because of Mr. Poe.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Ms. Adler.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Mr. McGlennon.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye. And with that, we will come down and present the resolution. So, Mr. Poe, you come forward, please.
So I just wanted to say we're honoring Danny Poe who retired on June 1st after 23 years of service to the James City Service Authority. Back in the mid-1990s, I helped coach a Little League baseball team, and I met a guy named Danny Poe who was also helping coach that team, whose 9 or 10-year-old son was on the team. That particular son is now an engineer for Hampton Road Sanitation District and is married with children, which makes me feel very old, but that's beside the point. I had heard later that Danny had been hired by the JCSA as the chief wastewater engineer, and I thought that was great. Although I didn't realize just how great it was until I came to the Service Authority about 6.5 years ago and had the honor and the privilege to work with Danny very closely over those last 6.5 years. Danny has, as I said, has been the JCSA's chief wastewater engineer for 23 years, but he's been much more than that to the organization. Danny was deeply respected for his skill as an engineer, his work ethic, and his demeanor. I've often joked with Danny that if he hadn't been an engineer, he would have made an excellent diplomat. And I really do mean that. But thankfully for me, Danny became an engineer, and Danny says he prefers that because he likes to solve problems. And let me tell you, he solved a lot of problems for the JCSA over the last 23 years. I want to thank Danny for everything he did for the JCSA and its customers. And I want to thank him personally. I learned a lot from Danny in the last 6.5 years working with him, and appreciate all the support you've given to me over that period of time. We wish him and his family the best. Kathy, his wife, is here. She's a school teacher who's retiring as well in about a week and a half. And one of Danny's sons,
My oldest son, David, and his wife, Rachel, and my 2 grandchildren here are also here.
So So we're also going to read a resolution of appreciation that the board just adopted into the formal record. And so I'm going to put my glasses on for this. Whereas Mr. Danny Poe has been employed by the James City Service Authority as Chief Wastewater Engineer from February of 1998 through May of 2021. And whereas Mr. Poe is retiring effective May 31st, 2021. And whereas Mr. Poe has been involved in every wastewater project during his 23 years of service. And whereas Mr. Poe has overseen tremendous growth in the system during his tenure. In 1998, JCSA had 11,440 sewer customers and 300 miles of sewer lines. Today, JCSA has more than double the number of customers, 25,064, and 447 miles of sewer lines. And whereas Mr. Poe was the project manager for JCSA's consent order activities to address sanitary sewer overflows in 76 lift station basins, he designed and implemented a successful rehabilitation and maintenance program that meets all federal and state requirements. And whereas Mr. Poe was one of the primary developers of JCSA's asset management program that provides a comprehensive information-based method to manage infrastructure life cycles and accurately forecast associated capital spending. And whereas Mr. Poe assumed management responsibility for all wastewater-related functions at JCSA, which has resulted in a more coordinated delivery of service and increased efficiency. And whereas Mr. Poe's professionalism, work ethic, integrity, teamwork, and willingness to mentor others are examples for all employees. Now therefore it be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the James City Service Authority does hereby recognize Mr. Danny Poe and presents this resolution as a token of appreciation for his dedicated service to the James City Service Authority. Be it further resolved that the Board of Directors offers its best wishes to Mr. Poe in his retirement. So that's for you.
Thank you. I'd just like to briefly say it has been a privilege and my honor to have served the customers of James City County and the customers of the Service Authority. It has been a very rewarding and challenging career. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate working with folks like Doug and the team at JCSA. It's more like a family than a team. And the board is wonderful to work with as well. I should mention that. You guys are great. I appreciate you. And it has just been a great experience for me, a very rewarding career. And I've left it in good hands, and I know that good things are going to come in the future. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. I just want to take a personal moment to say thank you to you and your wife. Your wife taught my daughter. I made my daughter go on FaceTime right before the meeting to speak to Mrs. Poe. And you know, there's other careers that would have paid more rather than public service, but you've both dedicated your life to public service, and our county is better for it. So thank you very much. And if you could come up so we can get a picture with the board and your family, we'd really appreciate it. Doug?
Yes, ma'am. A newer phone, too. Other duties, right? Faces here. Over here, make sure I get these in here. All right, I think that's pretty good. Nice group.
Okay, we do have a public hearing on the exemption to disconnection moratorium. Mr. Powell, if you want to give the staff presentation, and then I will open the public hearing.
Okay. In March of 2020, the board adopted a resolution suspending disconnections for non-payment in response to the coronavirus. Subsequently, the state of Virginia, as part of its adopted budget, placed a moratorium on residential disconnections unless a utility's arrearages exceeded 1% of annual operating revenues. At your last meeting, the board authorized this public hearing to exempt JCSA from the state moratorium. As the memo illustrates, JCSA's arrearages are currently 2.8% of revenues, thereby making it eligible for this exemption. JCSA wants to achieve a balance between the need to provide relief to customers who have been impacted by the pandemic and the need to resume disconnections to prevent delinquent balances from becoming unmanageable. Customers will not be disconnected until they have been offered options for relief grants and extended repayment options. Staff recommends approval of the resolution exempting JCSA from the state moratorium on utility disconnections. An amended coronavirus response resolution which verifies the exemption is also on your agenda for your consideration.
Thank you. With that, I'll open the public hearing. Are there any speakers?
No, ma'am.
All right, with that, I will close the public hearing, look to the board.
Madam Chair, can I just ask a question about, so there is still funding left under the federal relief program for folks who have arrearages in their?
That's correct. We've spent about half, roughly half of our allocation. So we have until basically November to spend the other half. And that's one of our, that's our impetus for really wanting to go ahead and proceed with disconnections to encourage the folks who've been impacted to make application for those funds.
And I move the resolution.
Mr. Powell, we have a motion?
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower? Aye. Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
With that, we have board considerations, updated coronavirus response resolution. Mr. Powell, you have a presentation?
Yes, as stated, the updated coronavirus response resolution verifies the exemption from the state moratorium on utility disconnections. It also removes a previous suspension and change to the personnel policy concerning extended timelines for claims and grievances, and it also updates the order of succession for JCSA. I should also note that this updated resolution will automatically terminate upon action by the Board of Supervisors to terminate the local declaration of emergency. Staff recommends approval of the resolution.
Thank you. Your discussion?
Resolution.
Thank you. Mr. Powell?
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower? Aye. Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
All right, with that, we need to go into we need a motion to enter closed session for consideration of a personnel matter, the performance evaluation discussion of the general manager of the JCSA pursuant to section 2.2-371.
Did you want to do that now, or did you want to wait and do it after the Board
I
of
was
Supervisors?
just following what was on my piece of paper.
I
If you would prefer to do it when we go in with everyone else.
I assumed you'd go through both business meetings and do the closed
So
sessions.
should we get a closed session at that time, then we'll interject with you and do a closed session?
Yeah, we can do it all three at the same time.
Okay, all right, we'll come back to that. And with that, are there any board requests and directives? Right, general manager's update, Mr. Powell.
I did just want to briefly update you on the status of the Route 5 water main break. I was in discussion with VDOT earlier today, and VDOT believes they're going to be able to issue a permit by the end of the week for that job, so that is progress. That's good news. We did also hear back from Virginia Marine Resources Commission that they're okay with our project. The one question I think that we still have is we do not believe we need a permit from the Corps of Engineers. We have submitted the joint permit application. They have that information. At this point, we've not been able to get from them the verification that we don't need a permit, but we are in communication with them to try to resolve that issue as quickly as we can. So,
What's the usage? Have we seen a drop in demand, or?
it's been stable or maybe even a little bit lower. Since we've asked for the voluntary restrictions. It has been fairly wet since we asked for those voluntary restrictions. So I don't know if we can conclude too much from them, but at least at the moment, I would say the trends have been good.
We've got some hot weather these last couple days, which, okay, so.
Can I just ask, Mr. Powell, if over the course of the next few weeks, as we're moving toward the beginning and completion of the project, that the website continue to update to show folks where things stand. And I've gotten some expressions of interest and sometimes concern from folks in the community about wanting to know more about where things stand. And
Yes,
so
yeah.
forth.
We will update the website and also try to use social media to get some information out when we have something that we can report. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will ask, well,
gonna
recess. We'll go into recess until after our closed session.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and call the meeting James City Board of Supervisors to order. And roll call, please, sir.
Sir, Ms. Sadler?
Here.
Ms. Sadler represents the Stonehouse District and is Vice Chair of the Board. Mr. Eisenhower?
Here.
Mr. Eisenhower represents the Jamestown District. Ms. Larson?
Here.
Ms. Larson represents the Berkeley District. Mr. McGlennon?
Here.
Mr. McGlennon represents the Roberts District. Mr. Hipple?
Here.
Mr. Hipple represents the Powhatan District and is Chair of the Board. Sitting to my right is Adam Kinsman, or far right, our County Attorney, and I'm Scott Stevens, County Administrator, and it's my pleasure to be Clerk to the Board. Mr. Chair?
Thank you. Okay, next there'll be a moment of silence, and after that, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. And Mr. Powell, would you mind leading us tonight in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. We'll get you a button. All right, now we'll go into public comment. Our first speaker tonight is Peg Borman. A little trash talk.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Stevens, Mr. Kinsman, Mr. Conifax, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Peg Borman, and I reside at 17 Settlers Lane in the Lightfoot area. And I'm happy to be here today to once again talk a little trash. But last month, I gave you a rundown on the annual spring cleanup. And in my opinion, it was a real success. And I say that because some groups are still out there picking up trash, and some of them are doing it on their daily walk. Some of them are doing it because they want to do it. And just to name a few, the employees at Publix, they're out there going up and down the area that they were assigned back in April, and they're still picking up. And also the Oak Tree Hunt Club. I want to tell you, those boys are out there retrieving tires and other large items that people dump and thinking they won't get caught and because it's up in the woods. But they don't just hunt game once or twice a year. They take days off and they clean up the back roads and the highways and on a regular basis. So I'm real proud of those boys. The major litter, debris, and trash comes from uncovered loads most of the time. I see that in my own eyes on a regular basis on the roadways and in my neighborhood. The dump trucks from the construction sites leave a good 10 to 12 inches gap from the load to the top of the tarp, and out flies all those loose trash. And the same with the local vendors. Some of them don't even cover their loads, or the door in the back of the truck doesn't close properly, and all too often out comes those plastic bags and loose litter and so forth that comes out on the roadways. And I would like some advice, if possible, as to what we can do about these situations. That's just a little bug in your ear, and I'd like to hear from any of you that wants to tell me what to do, or Mr. Kinsman, or any. I'm all ears. But now I want to talk about fun things. We, the Clean County Commission, is hosting a Volunteer Appreciation Day on Saturday, June 12th, in honor of our own Will Barnes. The James City Ruatan Club will be awarding their Will Barnes Jim Robertson Scholarship of $1,000 to a lucky graduating senior. Will was a member of the James City Ruatan Club, as was Jim Robertson. Jim was the first chairman of the committee that was formed the Clean County Commission, and Will was a longtime member. He and I were co-chairs from 2010 to 2016 when he passed away. He had the audacity to pass away on me. Anyway, I'm trying to live up to what these two men dedicated their efforts and time towards, and I hope that I'm doing what they would like for me to do. But I also want to pay homage to them today, along with Eula Radcliffe and what she and Jim introduced to James City County some 40 years ago, and we're trying to continue that today. Now, the picnic is at Veterans Park at the Will Barnes Shelter, Saturday, June 12th, 4 to 7. And I know some of you have already told me that you're going to be there, and I'm so happy, and I apologize for the late notification, but just knowing you're going to be there makes my heart warm. If you would like to attend, just let me know as soon as possible because I have to give the caterer the count tomorrow night. So I thank you for your time, listening to me rant and rave about trash, and have a good evening.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Briar Ownsby Connolly. Welcome.
So my name's Briar. I am a marine science major and environmental science minor at Coastal Carolina University. I'm currently working on my honors thesis using time-lapse and photographs to document the effects of seasonality on dune evolution and morphodynamics in Corolla, North Carolina, of which I am also looking at how climate change will impact the stability and resiliency of dunes on vulnerable barrier islands such as the Outer Banks and what that means for the survival of these systems. I'm also going to grad school to dedicate my life to studying the impact of climate change on shark species and how that relates to policy and their conservation. Now, based on the recent article in the Gazette and the recording of your previous meeting, there seems to be a misunderstanding of what climate change and renewable energy resources are. If you're still unsure about the realities of climate science, then you shouldn't necessarily hold a position where you're making decisions about climate change that will impact the entirety of James City County for generations. There's also a widespread lack of effort to defend the environment in our leadership here. Take, for example, the Chesapeake Bay Board. They need environmental engineers on the board, not developers. That's counterintuitive. So not only do we need education reform in sustainability and environmental sciences, but we need leadership reform as well. I don't necessarily have enough time to teach you guys the basic science of climate change, so I'll be emailing you my lecture I've given to Lafayette High School, Berkeley Middle School, and a theater class. Mr. Hipple, your confusion on Earth's past climate fluctuations in relation to geologic time is addressed in my lecture, so hopefully then you'll be able to distinguish natural causes of climate change versus anthropogenic climate change, which means human-induced climate change, which is agreed upon within the scientific community. I also shouldn't have to defend the validity of science. It is ignorant to assume climate change is not happening, but it's also dangerous to sit there and do nothing about it, especially when the East Coast is battling climate change right now in Maryland, the Chesapeake Bay, and the Jamestown settlement. If you don't know why I listed those places, then you're not paying attention. We have less than a decade to act quickly, efficiently, and sustainably to avoid the worst effects of anthropogenic climate change, of which we will not beat. It is to the point now where we can only adapt and hope to slow things down so we don't make the situation worse. And you guys are making it worse. I only hope you choose to revisit your decision to vocally oppose the state's pledge to be carbon-free by 2045 and the other environmental plans you denounced. To say that you're good stewards of the environment but then disregard the most important bullets in your comprehensive plan is exceedingly contradictory. The Earth has already warmed by 1 degree Celsius. We'd like to stay under 1.5. However, we're probably going to surpass that, putting us at 2 degrees Celsius. But with the amount of CO2 we're currently emitting, we're on track to hitting 3 degrees of warming. We're already seeing significant biodiversity loss and ecological collapse as a result of 1 degree of warming. So I hope you guys see the urgency of this issue and choose to be proactive. Your own staff were even urging you to see the stark realities of sea level rise as a result of climate change. I don't think I should have to bring up Chickahominy River Haven again, or the fact that we're on the East Coast, or that we're in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, one of the largest and productive estuaries in the United States. So climate change is an interdisciplinary problem, and it's a wicked problem, capital W, but addressing climate change is no longer aspirational, it's necessary. And I hope you guys reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I have no more public speakers today, so we'll go into consent calendar. Consent calendar consists of 1 month extension of Cox franchise. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I misread. I was going to ask a question, but it's further down.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Move the adoption of the consent calendar, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. Roll call, please, sir.
Ms. Sadler? Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel? Motion carries.
All right, next, our public hearing, ordinance to establish the Colonial Juvenile Service Commission. Ms. Vinroot, how you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you all for having me
Thank
here.
you.
I'm Rebecca Vennert, the Director of Social Services, and I do serve as the James City County staff on what's now the Colonial Group Home Commission. I do want to recognize Mr. Brian Fuller, who is here with us. He is from York County. He's the Director of Community Services, and he oversees the commission for this regional commission that we have. So he's here to help answer any questions that you all have. So what we're talking about tonight is a need to change the initiation of the Colonial Group Home Commission, which was established in 1985. It was established jointly between the counties of James City, York, and Gloucester, and the city of Williamsburg, pursuant to Virginia Code. And one of the main impetuses for the commission beginning was to operate the Crossroads Community Group Home. In August of 2020, the participating localities and the Group Home Commission decided to close the Crossroads Community Group Home. As such, there was a shift needed for services to function in the community. And because the commission was established as a group home commission, we needed to then change it to a different commission. So we're here today to request a change to become the Colonial Juvenile Services Commission. Under this commission, the same participating localities will continue to work together. And the purpose is to continue to work with our juveniles in these localities to make sure we have a comprehensive community-based programs and services. Focusing on preventing primarily the delinquency of at-risk youth and providing support to those youth and families. So at this time, I'll entertain any questions that you may have regarding this.
Questions?
Just wondered how many, at the, I hate to say the peak, but, what's the maximum that you've served, or is there a number that you like to hold it to, or you like to try to serve everyone, or how does that work?
So I will look to Brian. There's a complicated formula
Okay.
regarding that, but the Crossroads Group Home was not the only service that also was provided throughout this. And so there was a cap at the group home, but then there was additional services that were run, by York County to serve the population. And so there's different numbers of youth who were served in those programs.
Okay.
So I don't know if that answers, or if Mr. Fuller wants to.
That about does it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was very, whatever the need was for the programs, there was a fluctuation over time, I guess.
Okay. And then what,
sorry,
sorry.
go ahead.
What type of, is it possible to keep, what type of relationship do you establish? Is there any data, so to speak, that if there's success, and some of it is just simply out of your control, I realize that, but I wondered how you qualified whether something was working that you might be offering, or whether it wasn't, and someone's gotten.
The expert.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And thank you for your support with the commission. We have several programs that we use, and we constantly dialogue with the court service unit, and we've really in the last several years transferred into an evidence-based model of programs and success. So we've been working closely with the court service unit to look at those programs that work in other parts of the state and institute those. Some of the ones that we are looking at instituting now with the additional output that we have are restorative justice, and working with the courts, the judges, and the juveniles, and trying to get the children before they go through the court system, almost on a mediation type basis, where we sit down with the complaint and the court system and run them through that process prior to them getting into the court system. We're also do a lot of electronic monitoring and community service training and education, and we're also working on anger management training to begin in July, and really working with the courts to try to figure out what they need as things change. Truancy is another problem that we're starting to look at, and we tend to work out with the schools, social services, the law enforcement and the courts to see if we can get ahead of that. So we're really trying to look at more preventive things that we can get out into the community and get to the children before they get into the court system. And hopefully that'll be cost effective in a lot of ways if we don't have to run them through the courts.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Fuller, if I could just follow up, just so that folks who may be watching at home or to refresh our own memories about this, this is really kind of a shift in the direction of the commission itself, isn't it? That reflects the fact that the concept of the group home is not really the direction that we're trying to go in it these days?
Yes, the group home aspect of it. Those other programs we already had in place, so some of them, now we were adding some with the restorative justice. And that was one of the issues with the census at Crossroads. We were licensed to keep 16 children, staffed and everything to keep 12, and our average census was running about 3. So it just wasn't cost effective. The judges and the court system and the court service unit are looking at alternative ways. They want to keep the families together as much as possible. So we've seen an increase in electronic monitoring, where even though we have an electronic monitor on the child, we still have to do 3 visits per week in the home for each of those children. And the state mandated a couple years ago that one of those visits has to be on a weekend. So we have staff working 6 and 7 days a week, small staff, that are having to go out and visit those individuals. Even through COVID, we had to visit them 3 times a week in their homes. So, but we are able to keep in the homes, and we're trying to add programs to work with the families as well, because you got to help work with the families, because a lot of times it was the family situation that maybe caused them to get in there. So we're doing a lot of work with that and some fatherhood programs that we're starting to initiate.
Thank you very much. Then thanks for your work on the group home commission. That's been very, very important work for us.
Any other questions? All right, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Do we have any speaker cards on this one? Okay, no speaker cards on this. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and look for the board for direction.
I'll move the ordinance.
Okay. Roll call, please, sir.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. McGlennon?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler? Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, number 2 is amendment to the adoption budget of the Federal Coronavirus Relief Fund. Ms. Day, welcome.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. The Code of Virginia requires a public hearing when amendments to the budget to adjust the aggregate amount to be appropriated exceeds 1% of the total expenditures. This public hearing is to consider amendments to the adopted budget for federal coronavirus relief funds received by the county through the CARES Act of 2020, as well as the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. The first allocation of CARES Act funds was received by the county and appropriated by the board in June of 2020. The second allocation of CARES Act funds was received in August of 2020 and appropriated by the board in September of 2020. The total amount of CARES funding was $13.4 million. The attached resolution provides for the appropriation of the first allocation of the American Rescue Plan Act, and those funds were received by the county in May of 2021 in the amount of $7.4 million. It's recommended that the Board of Supervisors adopt the attached resolution to authorize acceptance of these relief funds and appropriate the use of these funds for its eligible uses under the American Rescue Plan Act.
Questions? All right, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Do we have any speaker cards on this one?
No, sir.
No speaker cards. I'll go ahead and close public hearing and look for the board for direction.
Motion to approve?
Motion for approval. Ms. Stevens, you call roll, please.
Mr. McGlennon?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler? Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. Board considerations?
Well, I would just
Okay.
like to remind everyone, June 12th is Saturday at War Hill High School is our, what do you call it? The special chemical collection, hazardous collection. I know I'll be there because we've all cleaned out our garages this year. So people can check the website. You know, there's household maintenance items, automotive items, lawn and garden. There are some things that aren't included, so I would encourage everyone to check the website. That's from 8 to 12. And technically, it's in York County, but the Wawa in Lightfoot is opening on Thursday. So the first,
Part of it. We were part of
Little
it.
tiny piece.
I know, but I'm told, everybody keeps telling me about it, it's York County. But we'll take that pump.
But the nice thing about it is with us sharing that, we have half the revenue on the taxes and York County has the other half.
Well, so they start their opening at 7:30 a.m. I'm sure everybody will be there.
What day is this?
A Thursday.
Thank you.
But the first 50 customers will receive a limited edition Wawa Williamsburg t-shirt. So I encourage everyone to come to Lightfoot and come to the new Wawa. I'm excited.
Yes.
So there we go. That's all I have for now.
A couple, 3 items. Back on May 27th, did a ribbon cutting over in near Fresh Market, the Masala Craft Indian Restaurant. I was really absolutely fascinated. The food was superb, and so I intend to make another visit.
Where is
but
that located again?
It's located right next door to the prescription shop.
Oh, okay.
Right across from the Starbucks. It's right next to the left side of Fresh Market. And on that same evening, on the 27th, Michael and I did the Huntley Brinkley Town Hall meeting in Ford's Colony via Zoom. Had a pretty good turnout and a lot of questions. It went a full hour and a half. Then we had, on May 29th, I attended a ceremony that I think maybe some of you had seen the invitation from Colonial Williamsburg. It was sponsored by Colonial Williamsburg. It was out at the Memorial Cemetery right behind the Outlet Mall. And it was a very moving ceremony. It was very small. It was some tents and rain, but CW did a wonderful job. They actually oversaw the restoration of a grave site marker for Talmadge Alpin, who's a staff sergeant, Green Beret, a class of 61 from James Blair High School, who was killed in Vietnam in 1968. And it was very moving because we had his classmates from high school there to speak about him. We had some survivors from the camp where he was, Marble Mountain, just south of Da Nang, some survivors of that attack who were there. These were people who were referred to as MACV SOG, Special Operations Group, and their casualty rate in the war was about 50%. So that was the fatality rate. So it was a very high-risk operation. So, but it was I thought it was a very moving ceremony for a local Vietnam veteran. And then CW did another very nice ceremony with the Sons and Daughters of the American Revolution out in front of the Governor's Palace on Memorial Day itself, and I was able to attend that and had really quite a good turnout. Must have had 200 or 300 people, tourists out there for it as well. So that was my Memorial Day.
I want to congratulate Muddy Marley's Dog Wash that is opened in 5251 John Tyler Highway. I was unable to get to their opening. I had a conflict, but really glad to welcome them to the Berkeley District and to James City County. Had our finance meeting today of the Tourism Council, and we are seeing an uptick in visitation. Also, we had quite a busy Memorial Day, and the average rate was not bad. So we're starting to get back a little bit, I think, and visitors are coming back. So we're glad about that. I know I've said that for a couple months, but we're starting to see the numbers reflect that as well. Just a few, unfortunately, very sad notes. I want to pass my deepest sympathies to the family of Randy Cooper. Randy was one of the owners of Custom Building Supply. He was the president and general manager for over 33 years. I think his family worked there with him as well. And I know that he was involved in, he was friends of Lake Powell, worked to help with the dam fix. And so it's quite a loss to the community. He served on the board of directors for the Bank of Williamsburg, which is currently Atlantic First Union. So I just want to tell his family, give his family our deepest sympathies and thank him for his contributions to James City County. Also, Robert Hodge, who you all might have run into him when you did the radio at WMBG. He passed away unexpectedly, and he always had great stories whenever you would go in there, but his family is a long-time family of the area as well. And then also our sympathies to Vicki Semino, the executive director of the Tourism Council. She unexpectedly lost her brother yesterday. So, anyway, so thank you.
Let me just say a word about Mr. Cooper, because he really was very helpful in one of those earlier storms that blew out Lake Powell's Dam, and he basically donated the supplies, trucked them all down to the site, and was very much responsible for that fix. Unfortunately, the dam just kind of kept experiencing more and more serious impacts as a result of increased rainfall and the like, but he certainly made a big impression in that way. And Mr. Hodge was quite a great entertainer.
Yes.
His father was my barber for many years, and so he had quite a challenge to face that. I know his parents are recently moved into a new assisted living facility, and Robert was dealing with some of their transition when this unexpectedly happened, so it's a great sadness. While we're on that particular subject, I also wanted to mention and to extend our condolences to Bruce Goodson on the passing of his mother. Bruce preceded me in this position in Roberts District and now lives in Tampa, but we certainly extend our sympathy to the Goodson family, the loss of Mrs. Goodson. And John Donaldson, who also served on the Board of Supervisors, lost his wife recently. Sue Donaldson passed away a couple of weeks ago. She was a great contributor in many ways to the community as part of the Williamsburg Contemporary Arts Center, formerly the Century Gallery, and a tireless volunteer for Child Development Resources, especially for their bid and buy auctions, and a great collector of art, and a wonderful contributor to the community, and so we'll certainly miss Sue and extend to John Donaldson our sympathy as well. He served for several years as the Jamestown District Supervisor on the Board of Supervisors. And finally, to thank the Parks and Recreation Department, the Police Department, Honey Butters, and all those who contributed to making the block party in Grove a success in the way that it normally is, that is, in spite of the terrible weather. We just gotten started down at the Abram Frink Center when the skies opened up with a thunder and lightning storm. But as soon as that passed over, things got back to normal, and folks drove through this year in the block party. Hopefully next time we have the block party, it'll be on a wonderful, not too hot day, because we're usually either 100 degrees plus or raining. But Parks and Rec and our police department really did a great job in having a presence there and making it a good experience for families. So thank you.
I was just going to, real quick, Ms. Borman had asked about help with the covering, and this board, Mr. Kinsman reminded us that we had asked for that to be a minimum of a $250 fine, and instead last year, because we had discussed about, I think you brought it to our attention, and we had agreed at all the debris that had blown out, but unfortunately no state legislator picked that up. So maybe you can, when we have our discussion moving forward, maybe you can be here with them, and maybe somebody will pick it up. So, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Hipple.
No, that's good. Yeah, we've had a lot of great community leaders passing recently, and thank y'all for bringing all of them up. And I know when Randy started the business there with several others, I started mine at the same time. So it was, they have a great company there, and have done very well in the community, and supported a lot of good causes in our community. So our prayers go to the Cooper family, and Randy was a really outstanding person. I have the Finance Chair Committee meeting on Thursday with HR Tech, and we're going to cover a lot of stuff having to do with the new tunnel and what's going on there and how we're paying for certain portions of it. So we're hoping to knock it down in about an hour and a half, but it's allowed to be longer, so we're going to do our best. Samuel, one of my children, is graduating this year, and so I want to shout out to Sam on a good job of, staying in school and concentrating, and he wants to look forward to, he's going to try to be an attorney. So I was like, yeah, we need one of them in the family. So, but good luck with that and his career choice there. So very proud of him on what he's been able to accomplish and what he's doing now. So great things to come. So other than that, everything else is moving forward. And next we'll go into a closed session and ask for motion to enter a closed session or consideration of personnel matter and performance evaluation discussion of the county administrator and the county attorney pursuant to section 2.2-311A1 of the Code of Virginia, and consideration of personal matter appointing individuals to county boards and or commissions pursuing a section 2.2-311A1 of the Code of Virginia, and 3, Colonial Group Homes Commission appointments, 4, Economic Development appointments, and 5, Boards of Zoning Appeal appointments. Motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to make the motion. I wonder if we would like the county administrator to do his report so that if anybody's watching, they can see that and not have to wait around till after we finish our closed session.
Okay. Yeah. You
Mr.
don't have
McGlynn,
much-
I didn't have anything to
Yeah.
share with you tonight, other than just a reminder that it's hurricane season, started in June, and not that we expect things till later if they come, but for our community to be aware and ready to take care of themselves and their family for a period of 7 days.
And I'll make the motion.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion on the floor. Roll call, please, Ms. Stevens.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Larson? Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Triplett?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, and at the same time, we'll go into,
So I'm
Before I
going to
gavel.
ask for a motion to enter closed session for the consideration of a personnel matter, the performance evaluation discussion of the general manager of the JCSA pursuant to section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia. Is there a motion? Thank you, Mr. Powell.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Schipel?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
all right, we're in closed session. ours. Go ahead and call the board back into session. Do you want to call the,
Chairman, I move that we certify that we only spoke about those items we indicated we would speak about in closed session.
Stevens, you call roll?
Ms. Sadler? Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel? Aye. Motion carries.
You want to report out?
Yeah, we would, I will make a motion that we appoint Mr. Christopher McDonald to a term to expire June 30th, 2023 to the Colonial Group Home Commission. We appoint Mr. Brandon Nice to another term on the Economic Development Authority for a term to expire the 31st of May 2025. And that we make a recommendation to the judge that we, Ron Campana, be appointed to the BZA for a term ending June 30th, 2025.
Okay. Roll call, please, there.
Ms. Sadler? Aye. Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel? Aye. Motion carries.
Okay. All right, we've got that. And then we're gonna, on the other two items, we'll put the stuff into works and then we'll bring that back to the next meeting. Correct? Everybody good with that?
Yep.
All right, I think that closes out.
Chairman, move
Yes,
to adjourn till June 22nd at 1 p.m.
All right, roll call, please, sir.
Ms. Sadler? Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel? Aye. Motion carries.
Oh, I need to,
Certification and,
yes,
We only spoke about those things we were authorized to speak about.
thanks. And we are back from recess, obviously, for JCSA. Thank you. Could you do a
Roll call.
roll call on the certification?
yes, ma'am. Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye. And with that, we need a motion to adjourn. I'm not
Move
sure.
to adjourn
Thank
till
you.
July
Our next
13th?
13th
For
at 5 p.m.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Stevens, if you could do the roll call vote on that?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye. We're adjourned. JCSA.